So my father was he was a salesman. He carried a bag and he sold, men's clothing to department stores and mom and pop shops, etc. And he understood the power, and then was able to pass to me, I think, the power of making everybody that you're talking to, they need to understand at that moment, they're the center, right? They're the center of the universe, and what they say matters. It doesn't matter who they are. And, one of the things that he always drilled in my head is that you treat the night janitor the same you treat the CEO. We're all people, we all have jobs, we're all adults, and a person's job doesn't define them, right? And everybody deserves respect. And he used to say, people who take care of you, they're the ones you need to take the most care of, right? Because that's where you want to have a strong relationship and understand. They want them to understand that they matter, and you got to be sincere. You've got to be honest. You've got to be true to yourself, and you've got to let them know that you're willing to do for them just as much as you want them to do for you. Probably even more that you're willing to do for them.
Hey, I'm Bryan Wish, and welcome back to the One Away Show. Today's guest is Rob Gorin, a leader, an advisor, and someone who's learned through experience that the way we communicate can transform every relationship we touch. In this conversation, Rob opens up about a moment that changed the way he shows up in the world, learning that his son is neurodivergent. What followed was a powerful evolution in how he listens, leads, and connects with his family, his teams, and the businesses he helps to rebuild. We talk about trust, communication beyond words, and the simple but radical idea of meeting people exactly where they are. It's one of the most heartfelt and practical episodes we've recorded, and I'm grateful it's with you. Let's dive in. Rob, welcome to the One Away Show.
Thanks for having me, Bryan.
Yeah, thanks for being here. It's great to have you. Rob, what is the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
I thought a lot about this when you first were gracious enough to ask me to join. And, initially I started thinking about all of the various one-away moments that we all have in childhood and as young adults, et cetera. And after a lot of thinking and introspection, I actually settled on something that happened a couple years ago. And I found out that a very close family member is neurodivergent. He has ADHD, and it wasn't diagnosed until much later than it usually is. So he's not a child, and it explained a lot, and it fit. How it was missed, good question. I don't know, but it impacted me in a couple of different ways, both in terms of how I conduct my two-way communications, and an understanding about those items that we can control, those actions that we can control, and those things that we can't control, and how to differentiate, and then therefore kind of address each of them differently. And I'll tell you, growing up, my father was always very focused on communication, and that's really important, and hearing people. So, going into that day, I thought I was a pretty good communicator, and I had worked a lot on it, and I do a lot of reading on the topic, et cetera. But I am night and day from where I was then. When you're dealing with somebody who's neurodivergent and has ADHD, they have difficulty staying focused. They have difficulty remembering details. Sometimes they have impulse control. And you have to take that into when you're talking to them. And what I realized is, once I kind of got over the shock and started to accept it and realized that, again, it wasn't something I did or a fault of mine, it was just something that was, and I had to adjust to it, because that I can control. I can't control what the other person's doing, but I can control how I adjust to it. I realized, we're all neurodivergent at some level, right? There's no normal. There's no one way to treat everybody, and it's not cookie cutter, which I think everybody knows. But it was kind of the level that I feel that I had to kind of, dive into, that has really helped, right? You can't treat everybody the same in communications, and this really forced me to learn how to communicate differently and in a whole new way with this family member. And then I realized that it was slowly kind of seeping into how I communicate with people at work, whether it be the people on my team or client or, another advisor, like, a lawyer or a banker, et cetera. And once I kind of saw some of the benefits and opened it up so that I was like, okay, this is going to work everywhere. I think it's really helped me connect at a different level. I think it's allowed me to negotiate in a way. I mean, I think a lot of people see negotiation as I win, you lose, and that's not really the way you get to a great solution. It's how do we both win? And it's allowed me to be more effective and accomplish more in a shorter period of time. And by by modeling some of the behavior, I think I start to look around and I see my team and the teams that I work with and the customers that I work with, and I see some of what I'm doing coming back to me, which only improves the process, right? And so I've really, it's been very, very powerful. Happy to get into as many details as you want, but it's really been powerful in terms of understanding, like I said, what I can and can't control and how I respond to that, and really appreciating the impact of words and silence, and how the specificity of those words really drives effectiveness, efficiency, and success in all aspects of life.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. A lot. So let me clarify just a few things to kind of ground us. One, it sounds like your dad was a huge influence on your communication abilities, evolution in communication, something I've always appreciated about you. So one, I can see that shine for sure. So your father was a big influence. Someone close to you was, found out later in life, they were diagnosed with ADHD. They were very neurodivergent. And it made you, sounds like, have a lot of epiphanies and maybe rethink just how you communicate with people in general, and brought you into a much deeper level of awareness, how you show up in all conversations across all stakeholders in your life. And it's been a total journey for you, and how you've just show up in the world. Is that like a fair assessment of it?
I think it's a much better way of saying it than I said it. I think that's right, much more to the point. But yeah, that's right. That's really what it's all about. And you're right. My father does have a big impact on my life. And when I take kind of the communication lessons that he always taught me, and he was in sales, and I learned a lot from just watching him and listening to him. And then I apply these kind of newfound reality that I'm living in. Not only is my relationship with my family better than it's ever been, but I'm strengthening my business relationships too.
Cool. Awesome. So, okay, this is super helpful. I want to peel the layers on a few things if you're ready to kind of dive in.
Let's dive in.
What about your father, right? I want to talk about how you've evolved, but I first want to understand who Mr. Gorin was. I want to understand what made him so good with communication, why he felt it was so important to pass it along to you, which you clearly have prioritized. So maybe give us some color into the family history here.
Yeah, so my father he was a salesman. He carried a bag, and he sold men's clothing to department stores and mom and pop shops, etc. And he understood the power, and then was able to pass to me, I think, the power of making everybody that you're talking to, they need to understand at that moment they're the center, right? They're the center of the universe, and what they say matters. And it doesn't matter who they are. And, one of the things that he always drilled in my head is that you treat the night janitor the same you treat the CEO. We're all people. We all have jobs. We're all adults. And a person's job doesn't define them, right? And everybody deserves respect. And he said, especially, he said, and he used to say, in fact, to kind of people who take care of you, they're the ones you need to take the most care of, right? because that's where you want to have a strong relationship and understand. They want them to understand that they matter, and you got to be sincere. You've got to be honest. You've got to be true to yourself, and you've got to let them know that you're willing to do for them just as much as you want them to do for you, probably even more that you're willing to do for them. And then it makes it much easier and much more likely that they can do for you. And it really comes about meeting people where they are. And that what I just said, as I'm thinking about those words, it didn't come out the exact way I wanted it to, but because it's not about getting stuff, it's just about meeting people where they are and creating an honest relationship. And a sincere is probably even a better word, relationship, so that everybody feels heard, everybody feels important, everybody understands that it's a two-way street. All relationships are two-way streets, and that you're willing to do more than your fair share to meet them wherever they are. And that's the critical message I took from my father, aside from, treat people with respect, treat them the way you want to be treated. And this kind of epiphany with the neurodivergency, I think it really drove it home for me and helped me take it to another level. I always thought I understood what he said and what it meant. But it took this epiphany for me to really get to the place where my father attracted people. My father was a confidant for more people than I could count, and I never quite understood how he got there. And as I start to apply some of what I've learned around dealing with neurodivergency and talking to people and meeting them where they are, I feel like I've gotten closer to where he was. I don't know that, I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I got closer to where he was, and my ability to communicate with people, to help people, and to be there for them.
Got it. Interesting. So I really appreciate the context on your father. Sounds like it would be a great household to grow up in, a friendly and thoughtful household to grow up in.
I was blessed.
So I want to come to the neurodivergent side. I know this question will blend into it, but you've probably said meeting people where they are 6 times, not in a bad way. It's just like there's a importance on that to you. So my question is like, it seems like this has become a huge awareness of like how you meet people where they are in certain situations. What were you doing maybe prior in conversations, maybe before this was at the forefront of how you communicate? And how were those conversations and maybe outcomes of those conversations different?
It'd been different from like today.
Yes, right. With the new awareness of meeting people where they are.
So I find that as effective as I thought I was, I'm much more effective today. It takes longer. It took longer historically than it does for me now to get to, for lack of a better term, a solution or an equilibrium point, so that when we're trying to solve a problem, we're able to solve it faster or more completely. Or I think I have a better understanding of where people are coming from now than I thought I did, but and I think a lot of us do. But understanding, one of the big things that you learn with neurodivergency is it's as much about not the exact words that are being said, but what's the meaning of what's being said. And we can all parse words, and that's very simple in some respects, but it's how do you take those words and truly understand the meaning that is trying to be conveyed, and make sure that two people are on the same page, right? So whenever we're talking, and to get, I'm in a negotiation, as we speak, and it's I have a much better sense of where they are, and that's of what is important to them, and it's not just a number, right? It's more than a number. It's more about what really do they value, and for a lot of people that number is part of it, but it's not all of it. People, I can see by the look in your face. So there are, here's a for instance, there's a lot of ways to compensate people, right? Obviously, a huge part of our compensation is a dollar value, but that's not enough, right? It's not, in and of itself, it's not enough. You have to hit a basic level, but people want to be appreciated, they want to be valued, and they want to know they're adding value. And to do that, you've got to connect with them to understand where they think they can add value, and you have to explain where you think they can add value and meet someplace so that everybody is benefiting. And so that you're not duplicating efforts or have huge holes in the process or in what you're doing. That's really important. And so it's about how do I more fully understand, right? And how do I make you more fully understand and more comfortable to share with me what you're truly thinking? That this communication is a safe space and you can tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah. So when my expression was, okay, basically, what else do they value? And so what I'm hearing you say within that, and maybe not saying, but saying very much so, is, okay, for people to tell you what else they value beyond the number, it takes trust. And it takes communication around like what's important to them beyond.
100%. That's probably the word I was searching for and couldn't get. Yes, it takes trust.
Am I right?
You want to build that trust and that bridge that connects you, and you've got to create that trust. And look, as a consultant, as someone who walks into a business, I got to build that trust so they understand it's not about any one person winning and another person losing. It's about how can we all win together. Right? And it's about how do we take the journey together. That's what you're trying to do. There are a few different kinds of communication. Sometimes you're just kind of expressing yourself and getting some thoughts across. But in business, a lot of it is how do we take this journey together? And I want to build that bridge and build that trust so that they're willing to take the trip with me.
Okay, so Rob Gorin walks into a business. You are coming in at a time where, the business has gone through some rough patches, given what you do. Feel free to speak to it. I would love to know, like, if you were to create the Rob Gorin framework for trust building, as you enter a business when there's not a whole lot of trust, is going through a reconstruction and a rebuild, what's step one? What's step 10? Like walk me through the Rob playbook as the most intuitive way possible.
No, I that's helpful, and I think a lot of that has been impacted by what I'm talking about. But as you know, I work with companies that everything could be okay, but we just need to tweak some things. We want to make it better. How do we increase our revenue? How do we become more efficient? How do we get to the next level of success? All the way to I've got some significant problems. We really got to deal with it. To how do I make payroll next week? So when I walk in, I need to get a lay of the land. And the most important thing is to listen and to give people that opportunity to explain the situation from their perspective, right? And it's that old thing, I'll quote my dad again, right? Which is, there's your truth, my truth, the truth, right? So that's all about meeting people. So what are they experiencing? How is it impacting them? And what's the impact of that experience on the company, right? I always tell when I was my kids were little and I would go into career day and people would say, "What do you do?" What the kids would ask me, "What do you do?" I'd say, "I'm a doctor for businesses," right? And that was always the way to help these young kids visualize it. But if you think about it, you go to the doctor and your wrist hurts. Sometimes the doctor looks at your neck and you're saying, "Well, doctor, that's not where the pain is." And he's saying, "Yes, but the pain's a symptom and it could well come from a nerve in your neck." So to fix the symptom, I got to understand what's the really root cause. And that's a big part of it. You walk into a company that has liquidity issues. needs cash or was losing market share. What's causing that? That is a symptom. So what's causing that? And what I find, I'll say 50, 60% of the time, is that part or all of the solution is already in-house, but either people aren't hearing each other, or they're afraid to speak up, or there's a lack of trust of what if I do speak up, or people are afraid if I speak up, I might be wrong, and I don't want to do that. Just getting people to talk. And it's amazing how you have these one-on-one conversations. You tell them, this is anonymous. This is you and me in a room. I'm not going to share specifically what you say to me with anybody, but I will take what everybody said to me and start to put a plan together. How much you can learn, right? And I will tell you I'll tell you an extreme story. I had I literally had a night janitor at a fairly large manufacturing plant. After I had some meetings with the staff, etc., I remember he sheepishly came into the office I was using at that point and said, "I have an idea, and I'd like to talk to you about it." And I invited him in, sat him down, I got him some coffee, and I could tell how uncomfortable he was and how stunned that I was welcoming him. And after the conversation, he told me that he'd been trying to get this message across for over a year and just didn't feel anybody was listening to him. But he saw how a machine that was being put on autopilot for the night, he saw how it was malfunctioning. And he also saw how the team that, the night team that was, for maintenance and cleanup didn't have the tools that they needed. And the tools that they needed, it was a couple $100. It wasn't, and this is a multi-$100 million company, and he is just listening to him and implementing what he suggested saved the company somewhere between $600,000 and $1 million a year. Okay, now it would be easy to have dismissed that, and clearly people did for over a year. But when I tell you it probably cost a couple $1,000s for the various things that he was talking about and 3 or 4 meetings with the appropriate people for everyone to get on the same page, and we implemented it and the savings started to roll in, right? I mean, that was a huge, from day one, that was a huge benefit. And it was all about making him feel comfortable enough that he could speak, that he wouldn't get in trouble. And by building the trust and giving him the avenue to speak, we found something that we probably likely wouldn't have found.
Wow. It's, as you're talking, it just seems like when you showed up in that conversation, though, you said he was uncomfortable, but you created an environment for him to speak. And I remember, to build on that, you told me a story maybe 6-8 months ago about working with a company and ensuring all the employees kind of on their way out were fed or had meals or something. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'll tell you that.
Sure, that's the story, because I think it builds on everything you're sharing.
It's very interesting because it's actually related to the same situation. I was working at a company. It had a manufacturing plant and it employed about 175 people. And we found, we were going to have to sell the company. That was the only way forward. And it was a lot of people where English was a second language, where they were very skilled in terms of the machinery that they could operate, but not clear how transferable those skills might be to other situations. And it was a union situation as well. And so what I did the very first week I was there, I walked into the lunchroom, right, when they were taking lunch, and I tried to talk to people, and I got nowhere. And so the next Friday, I remember I stopped at the supermarket. I bought a bunch of Oreo cookies and Fig Newtons and things like that, and I sat there for the lunch period, and no one came near me. couldn't get anyone to talk. But I showed up the next week and I brought in a different snack. These snacks were costing me, $15 a week. And finally, I think I want to say the third or fourth week, and I sat there for the 45-minute break. In the third or fourth week, somebody came up to me and said that they were having a problem with their paycheck, and they thought too much money was coming out of the paycheck. Could I help them? And I took them immediately to HR. We spent as much time as we needed. We worked through it, and we were able to fix the check. And it was a small thing. But then the week after that, I show up again with whatever, popsicles or ice cream sandwiches, whatever. And now 3 or 4 people are talking to me and asking me questions and giving me input and giving me suggestions. And over the course of the year that I worked there, I built this, and Friday was our time, and I was always coming in with some kind of different kind of snack. And look, I realized that not a lot of people were going to be able to make the move to the new company because it was different geographically. But I brought in, some folks to teach them how to to teach these people how to write a resume so they could look for another job. I brought in multiple nights a week people to teach them English as a second language to expand their horizons. I brought in people to help to coach them in interviewing, right? And all of these things had minimal cost to us. Right. But it kept people at the plant and it kept them working and they felt more invested. And over the course of that year, when they knew the company was going to be sold, we lost 5 people. Now they know that the plant is shutting on a date certain, but nobody left. Right. 5 out of 175 left. And on the very last day, which is a Friday, I walk in with my store-bought snacks, and there is this unbelievable spread of food everywhere. And it turned out they had all made something. They basically called it they created a potluck lunch, and they all made something, some of the best food I've had to this day. And we ate together, and they gave me a card, and in the card was a gift certificate to Omaha Steaks. And they had all each pitched in $2 to $5, put that together, and bought me this gift card. And these were people who were living check to check, making minimum wage because there was no ability to raise their pay at that time. And so this was meaningful money to them, right? Even $5 was meaningful money. And the fact that they made this food for me, and what the card said is, you've been feeding us for a year, now it's our turn to feed you. And it turned into this little celebration. And while it was sad to kind of part ways, they were very appreciative. They were very of all that I did for them, and they wanted to give back to me. And I have in my office at home framed that card, that little greeting card has 170 signatures on it of all of the people that were impacted, and that I've never forgotten that. And then filed under, you never know what's going to happen. Fast forward 4 or 5 years, and I got referred into an opportunity because a middle manager in a workforce that used to work at that factory recommended us. And that somehow bubbled up. Someone gave us a call, and we ended up getting, a fairly large contract from it. So you just never know. And it's about treating people with respect and being true to yourself and listening. That's really it.
Wow. I mean, I got chills like 2 to 3 times as you were sharing that story. I was like, I want to see a picture of that card. You should send it.
I owe that to you. Yes.
I mean, you don't owe it to me. It's a gesture. I think would be fun. It'd be rewarding to see. Wow. Well, I mean, I think just to play back, you really taught people in a way really had nothing to give that they could give and make such a difference even on the littlest amount. And without you showing up and caring, it's like you taught all of these people something that they'll probably take with them for the rest of their life. I mean, what a moving last day I'm sure you felt it.
I've never forgotten it. There are a few of those people that, these are not people that I would have come across in a normal course of life, but I still get, happy holiday emails from them. I have never forgotten it. I think what one of the people said to me, and this is something my father, was saying, taught me as well, is it's not about making sure they know what you're doing for them. Just do it. Right. And they benefit out of it. And it's not, I'm just trying to do the right thing. Which is one of the reasons I like where I'm working, because that's our operating model is to do the right thing. But it's really just doing the right thing, and everything else will flow from it. I'm not doing it with any expectation of getting something back. So
super special. I mean, you come across so genuine, and I think in all your interactions, I think to apply that to a company in the communication, you learn from your father to what you've learned, from people close to you on the neurodivergent scale. It's cool. It's cool that you've developed such a hyper awareness around a skill in life that is vital to everything. One question I had for you, Rob, was the individual who, just for context, who was the individual neurodivergent? What was the relationship to you?
it was my son.
Okay.
And he is, we found out, probably 10, 15 years later than you typically find out today. If somebody, you get diagnosed, and it came very late, for him.
So tell me about this. How are you communicating with your son prior to finding this out? And then how did you communicate differently with your son after?
I think there are two main ways, right? Two main kind of differences. One is, as I said, with ADHD, you often has, an individual often has trouble staying focused or remembering details. And so he would come to me and talk about problems that were created in retrospect by some of that. And I would go into problem solving mode, right? I would try to say, okay, well, what can we do about that? How do we fix it? And I would try to create, not only how do we fix that situation, but how do we fix it so you don't get in that situation again? And sometimes that would greatly frustrate him. And what I do today differently is sometimes he just wants me to say, I get it. I hear you. I understand. That sucks. That's unfortunate that you had to go through that. And sometimes that's enough. And sometimes I'll say something like that, and he'll say to me, what do you think if I do X? But he's already thinking about it. And I was so concerned about fixing it for him and protecting my son, I wasn't giving him the opportunity to fix it himself, which is far more important and far more rewarding than me fixing it. Because now not only is the problem solved, but he has the inner belief that I can do this and that I can fix this. And I did it. Yes, I ran it by my dad, but it was my idea and I did it. So it's that whole thing about giving a fish or teaching them to fish. I was very focused on giving him a fish and not even realizing it. And by just stopping and listening and saying, I hear you, I understand that sounds hard or what have you, I was teaching him how to fish inadvertently without even kind of realizing it. So I really think that's a huge difference in how I communicate. And I think I've been able to bring that into the workplace and with both people, as I said, people on my team and others. And the other thing is that he would get frustrated, and if I couldn't help him with that frustration, my inability to help him would cause me to get frustrated. But he didn't perceive it this way. He perceived it as, well, you're getting frustrated with me. And what was really happening was my son was in some kind of, not a great place, and wasn't happy or had a bad, and it could be a minor thing, right? Like he spilled his cup of iced tea, right? It didn't have to be a major thing. And when I couldn't get that frustration levels down for him, it caused me to get frustrated, which caused our conversations to escalate. unnecessarily, because I'd get frustrated. That would make him more frustrated. I would know I'm not getting the job done. I'd get angrier at myself, and that manifested in how I spoke to him. But now recognizing that frustration, recognizing that I can't control what happened. I can't go back in the past and fix and make it not happen. And I can't control the frustration or the emotions in the other person. I can only control how I react to them. Right. And so by letting myself, giving myself the pass that says, I can't do this. And I'm not doing anything wrong. Let's listen, let's talk. And see if there's a way to, and sometimes, like I said, just giving him the space to describe it to me and to name his frustration or emotions allows it to pass, and he de-escalates very quickly. And in doing some research on all of this, what I found is that, or what I learned is that when you have an emotional reaction to something that's going on with you, the physical part of that reaction, it's 90 seconds or less. And in conversation, in communications and in our day-to-day, we often immediately react to that physical reaction, right? Something happened, we didn't expect it. It caught us by surprise. It created some kind of emotional reaction, which manifested physically. You got to get through those 90 seconds because that's your body telling you that for whatever reason, it's not liking it. So you got to take a deep breath and you got to recognize that that's what's happening. After those 90 seconds, any kind of emotional reaction that you're having, it's up here. You're causing it. And you need to take a deep breath and understand that. And so even in, we get bad news at a client. My son would come home with bad news about something that upset him, or you have a bad situation at a client. Deep breath, get through those 90 seconds and stay calm. And the more worked up someone else gets, hopefully the calmer you can stay. And that allows you to actually work through the situation much more rationally and meet the person where they are, because you're saying, it's okay. It's okay that you feel that way. It's okay that you have that reaction, that emotional reaction. I'm with you. Not, I'm going to fix it. Not, don't react that way. Not, you're overreacting, which is a phrase that I've come to hate, right? It's all about, hey, what you're feeling is valid. What you feel is valid. Take a deep breath. Let's talk. How can I help? How do we approach this? What do we do? And when you get to that point, you really understand. You can get to a place where you can understand the other side. You've met them where they are. And you've created a bridge to create the solution, whatever that might be.
What's so beautiful about what you just shared is it's like your frustration, like before you realize how he was wired in some ways, it's not like your frustration, at least what I'm hearing you say, is not so much frustration at your son. It was frustration because, one, you cared so much about what he was going through, plus frustration with yourself that you didn't know how to show up for him in that moment.
That's correct. That's perfectly said. That's right.
I'm sure you've seen that video called The Hammer and the Nail.
Yep. Right. If you got a hammer, you're a hammer. Everything's and that's what I'm talking about. You've got to be very specific to the person and the situation you're in.
I really resonate with this for a lot of reasons that don't need to be shared here, but I totally get both sides actually of the coin. So maybe being like your son, but also being on the other side in your shoes. That's right. So you're striking some memories and nerves in a good way. So just tell me this. I mean, your son and you, how is the relationship now?
So look, as a young kid, we had a great relationship, and in part because I was the dad and he was the young son, and it was in some respects easy, right? The power structure, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. I don't mean it that way, but the hierarchy was clear as he got older and started to become a young man and started to push back, we had some issues. Like we were not, and I used to lament to my wife, like, I don't understand. He's not hearing me. I'm not hearing him. We're not connecting. And once we had this, once we got the diagnosis, and I got advice and help and support in terms of what do I need to do differently to help him and to be there for him. I would say our relationship is probably at the best it's ever been. And 2 weeks ago, he's got a bunch of buddies and he plays a lot of baseball, so he's got a lot of friends, etc. But he let me know that I don't even know how it came up, but if I was getting married today, you'd be my best man. Like, I don't even know where that conversation, I can't even tell you how we got to that conversation, but the fact that that's how he saw me right now, given where we were a couple of years ago and how we were struggling to communicate, that was I don't even know how to define it. It was more priceless than anything I could get anywhere else.
Oh, what a joy being a father.
Yeah, that to me was what it was all about. That one brief conversation with that he probably doesn't even remember we had, or that he saw as a throwaway line, that has powered me for weeks. That's given me enough energy and power for weeks.
Mic drop. I think we should end the conversation now. No. Oh my God. Yeah. What it's I mean, I don't have kids yet. But I can imagine, you want your kids to be happy. I heard a quote from someone I do some personal work with, and he said to me, your parents are only as happy as their least happiest kid. And it's always stuck with me. And especially for someone like you who has a heart and care, for whatever people in your orbit. And with your son, I can imagine it's been.
And you know what, Bryan, what I'll tell you? For years in business, I would get my reviews, or I would talk to people and they would say to me, hey, no matter how successful I was, either in my eyes or someone else's eyes, your biggest issue is that you care too much. And if you could take a step back, you'd be a much better businessman. And I understand where that thought was coming from. And I'll tell you, it took me a long time to understand that that's okay. It's not me. That's not who I am. And to lean into it. And if that means that I've left something on the table periodically, okay. But it also means I can go into places and be successful where maybe others can't, because I have a different perspective. And it has taken me a while to embrace the fact that I care. And it sounds so silly that I have to say I care, particularly in this, day and age right now where caring seems to be at a minimum sometimes. I care. And that's who I am. And I'm aware of it. And I will sometimes ask people who are not involved, hey, just double check me here. This is what I'm thinking, right? Am I okay? And to make sure that I have, the best advice possible and the best perspective possible. But caring is not a weakness. It's a strength.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't always remember that from a societal perspective.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, Rob, this has been one of the most beautiful conversations I've had in weeks, maybe months. So this is memorable. And not surprised by anything I've heard. And it just makes me cherish our relationship even more. So thank you for showing up with such vulnerability and transparency into your life, your son's life, but also how you have use these gifts to impact other people.
Yeah, look, I love the opportunity to talk about these kinds of things. This is a conversation that is not in vogue these days, and that's a shame. But even kind of showing the vulnerability, et cetera. Again, this is all a strength, and it's all to everybody's benefit if more of us could do it this way. And again, it took me a long time to get there, but I really appreciate the opportunity to share kind of my story and my growth. I appreciate it.
Of course, it's been very special. Rob, where can people find you, reach out to you, learn a little more about Rob Gorin, what Rob Gorin does?
Absolutely. I am I work for a company called Getzler Henrik and Associates, which is a division of the Hilco Global. But you can reach me anytime at my email, which is rgorin, RGORIN, at Getzler Henrik, GETZLERHENRICH.com. I would love to hear from folks.
Thanks so much for your time, Rob. I'm excited to see you continue to evolve and show up in the world how you do.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The One Away Show with Rob Gorin. What struck me the most was Rob's story about how personal growth, rooted in his love for his son, rippled in his leadership, his work, and his ability to create change from the inside out. Whether it's building trust with the team in crisis or sitting with discomfort instead of trying to fix it, Rob reminds us that communication is never one size fits all. It's a craft, one that starts with presence and care. If this episode moved you, feel free to share it or leave a review. We release new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time, keep listening deeply and meet people where they are.